Donald Trump and USCIS are making it harder to become a U.S. citizen. Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States, out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. On August 15, 2025, USCIS issued a new policy memorandum, and in that memorandum, they're making it much harder for lawful permanent residents to take that last rung to become part of American society and become a U.S. citizen. In this video, we're going to review the memorandum and make sure that you understand everything you need to know to see whether it's safe for you to apply for U.S. citizenship. We're also going to do everything we can to empower you to file the strongest case possible to increase your chances of becoming a U.S. citizen. The changes in the August 15th, 2025 memorandum all have to do with a phrase called good moral character to the satisfaction of USCIS. It's a phrase that comes out of the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's been in there for decades, but now USCIS wants to expand the types of conduct that they think determine whether or not someone is a person of good moral character. They want to go beyond the statute, beyond the regulations, and to give frontline officers a whole lot more discretion in deciding whether or not you, the green card holder, have good moral character and are worthy of becoming a U.S. citizen. Here's why it matters to you. If you can't prove to the satisfaction of that officer sitting across from you that you have met all of their requirements, that you are a person of good moral character, even if you are a person of good moral character, you are not going to be able to become a citizen and your case is going to be stuck or denied. Let's take a look at the memo. Its title, Restoring a Rigorous, Holistic, and Comprehensive Good Moral Character Evaluation Standard for Aliens Applying for Naturalization. The purpose, evaluating aliens seeking to become naturalized is the most sacred and profound responsibility that U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is charged with performing. Becoming a naturalized U.S. citizen means being an active and responsible member of society instead of just having a right to live and work in the United States. Among other eligibility factors, aliens applying for naturalization must demonstrate that he or she has been and continues to be an individual of good moral character, GMC. Evaluating GMC involves more than a cursory mechanical review focused on the absence of wrongdoing. It entails a holistic assessment of an alien's behavior, adherence to societal norms, and positive contributions that affirmatively demonstrate good moral character. So they're trying to raise the bar from here to here. They're not satisfied with the way the cases have been evaluated in the past, and they want to make it harder and to make it easier for officers to decide that you're not a good person and they're not going to give you your citizenship. The first big change in this memorandum is that it expands the type of conduct that USCIS officers can look at. Historically, they have just gone down a list to see if you committed this crime or did that bad act, didn't pay your taxes, didn't pay child support, things like that. But now they want to greatly expand it and give officers the right to look into all corners of your life to see if you are the patriotic individual that you need to be in order to become a U.S. citizen. And I'm putting my hand on my heart and cringing at words like patriotic because the idea that these people who are running USCIS with a president in the White House who's a felon have the right to expand good moral character and to make it harder for hardworking immigrants to become citizens is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. And I don't even know that it's legal. And that's the second big change, the discretion that we're going to give frontline officers in making a subjective determination that I don't know if this person has been honest, I don't know if this person has been leading a good life, I don't know if I like this person's reputation in the community, so I don't think I'm going to give them their citizenship. It's way too much discretion to give to a frontline bureaucrat working at USCIS. They already abuse the process too much. They already abuse immigrants too much. So the idea that we're going to expand that and make it easier for them to decide whether or not this person is a good person according to them? Are you kidding me? That brings us to our third change. Any lawful permanent resident who is seeking to become a U.S. citizen has to show that they've been a person of good moral character for 5 years. If they're married to a U.S. citizen, then it would only be 3 years. But the thing is, USCIS, under this new policy memorandum, can look far beyond the statutory period. They can look at everything in your whole life to determine whether or not you're a lawful permanent resident who deserves citizenship. It's greatly expanding, again, their power to decide yes or no for naturalization. USCIS has always been able to look at the convictions of people applying for citizenship to decide whether or not they get to become a citizen. No problem with that. In fact, there's a statute that says if you've committed an aggravated felony, then you don't become a U.S. citizen. That's the law, but they want to expand it. They want to say we can look at all the criminal stuff you've ever had, no matter how serious or minor, and we can use that in determining whether or not you deserve citizenship. So they want to be able to look at arrests that don't result in a conviction. They want to look at dispositions. They want to look at any interaction that you've had with law enforcement, even if you weren't convicted, and use that against you in determining whether or not you become a U.S. citizen because you're not a good person. They want to be able to look at immigration violations. Now, of course, any of those violations would have been forgiven when you became a lawful permanent resident. So they want to look, again, at your entire immigration history. They want to relitigate your immigration history to see whether you should have gotten your green card in the first place and to use that against you in determining whether or not you are a person of good moral character. The new memorandum also allows USCIS officers to dig in more on people's financial responsibilities. Have they been paying their bills? Have they ever been sued? Now, USCIS has always made it a condition on becoming a citizen that you're current on your taxes, that you've paid your child support. They want to look at all kinds of financial records. And what this means is this is going to slow down the process because they have to look at everyone's financial records. It's going to be much, much harder to become a U.S. citizen. They want to be able to look at substance abuse, alcohol, or drugs, even without a conviction, and try to use that against you in determining whether or not you're a person of good moral character. The memorandum highlights that if you've ever made a misrepresentation or lied to a U.S. government official, that this constitutes a permanent bar on you ever becoming a U.S. citizen because you can't establish good moral character. And repeatedly, the memorandum comes back to officer discretion and says that even if you've met all the requirements on the N-400 and for naturalization, if the officer subjectively feels that you're not a person of good moral character, they can deny your case. That's where I think it's illegal. That's where I think it's subject to challenge in court by lawyers who have had their clients' naturalization cases denied. Let me read you from the memorandum where they think that discretion comes from. It's this catch-all clause. The catch-all clause states that an alien may lack good moral character even if he or she does not commit an offense within one of the 9 enumerated classes. In assessing conditional bars, officer have authority and now explicit directive to weigh all relevant evidence, both favorable and adverse, before granting or denying naturalization. So they're explicitly directing them to do this. It's not that they can do it if they feel like it, they have to do it. Naturalization is envisioned not simply as a procedural immigration benefit, the greatest of all, but a significant legal transformation, an assimilation to a country that demands both allegiance and character. And that's the thing. They think that they have this beautiful, wonderful society, and they expect the immigrants to 100% assimilate the way that they envision them. These white people running USCIS want all immigrants to assimilate into the United States as they would have them do. It does a travesty to the idea of individual rights or of what people have the right to do or not do, or to participate or not to participate. They think they're the final judges, and I think it's deplorable. Another big problem with this change is the fact that it applies retroactively, and it applies retroactively not to cases that are already in the pipeline, which it does. In other words, once this goes into effect, it's going to apply to everybody going through citizenship, including people who applied before this August 15th memorandum. But it's also now putting you on notice that they're going to go back to things that happened long ago, long before August 15th, 2025, and they're going to use that against you. Another reason why it is possibly illegal. And even if it's not illegal, it's certainly unfair. The idea that they can change the rules midstream, that some immigrant who's been working all these years to become a citizen, that now at the final hour, they can say, well, we're going to go back and look at what you did back then, when it goes beyond the 3 and 5 year statutory period. Totally unfair. What kind of effects is this going to have on naturalization in the United States? Well, what you're going to see is longtime lawful permanent residents who've been here for years, maybe decades, following all the rules. They apply for citizenship, but they get a crabby officer, an officer who's having a bad day, or they don't like people from Nigeria, or they don't like people from Iran, and they say, well, I don't know, I'm not seeing it. I don't think you've demonstrated enough good moral character. I've seen all this evidence of your bad stuff, and I know that you're a doctor, I know that you're contributing to society, but I just think it doesn't meet the standard. I don't think things are weighed equally, and I'm just not seeing it. Way too much discretion for that officer to have to decide whether or not this individual becomes a U.S. citizen. Let's talk about some of the practical takeaways from this new policy change. Well, first, you're going to have to submit a lot of evidence of good moral character. So again, it's not going to be the absence of bad moral character. That's how I always used to explain it to people, is that the N400 and the questions that are being asked are designed to think if there are reasons why you can't become a U.S. citizen. Now they want to flip the table and make it so that you have to prove that you are a good person, that you do volunteer work, that you have assimilated into society, that you are part of the fabric of our country. I believe it's a much higher standard than is called for by the Immigration and Nationality Act. I believe that this new memorandum is illegal and subject to challenge in court. I believe that if you have your naturalization case denied under this new rule, that you have a lot of challenges to it. Number one, did they publish it as a rule with notice and comment to give people the opportunity to challenge it before it's even implemented? Number two, I believe that it's given way too much discretion to frontline officers. Number three, I think that it's just patently unfair. And I think that courts are going to have to take a look at whether or not this sea change in the way that naturalization occurs is something that has to be changed by statute or by regulation, not just by a policy memorandum that they sneak out in the middle of the night on a Friday afternoon. Now let's talk about legal strategy. If you are getting ready to apply for citizenship, or even if you have a case that's already on file, you need to start developing evidence that you are a person of good moral character. If you volunteer, if you do a job that helps people, if you take care of your sick grandmother, anything you do, or any letters that you can get from friends or family members to demonstrate that you are a person of good moral character, that you are someone who contributes to society, that you are the kind of person that we want to be a U.S. citizen, you are now going to have to bring that to USCIS. You're going to have to now satisfy them, and if you have any negative factors, you definitely want to have a lot of evidence of good moral character. Let's talk about the big picture. Let's talk about how this all folds into the Trump and Project 2025 crowd's goal towards immigration overall, and that is to slow down legal immigration to the United States. They don't want you to become a citizen, because if you become a citizen, you could apply for your mom or your dad, and that means more immigrants are coming to the United States. So if they make officers take longer to decide cases, if they make officers issue requests for evidence, if they make officers get a supervisor review before approving a naturalization case, it all slows down legal immigration to the United States, which is what they were always after. They want to make America white again. They want to keep non-white people from coming to the United States. They want to get it back to the 1950s when only white Europeans could come here. This is what this is all about. They don't like the fact that the color of society is changing a little darker, and they're doing everything humanly possible to slow down legal immigration to the United States. But here's the thing. If you're going through the immigration process and you want to become a U.S. citizen, you're going to have to play the game. You're going to have to satisfy them. You're going to have to give them that evidence that you are a good person, that you have become part of society. And if you need our help, if you want our representation, and if you want us to be there in case they deny your naturalization, and you need to challenge this in court, the legality of this new scheme, we are the right attorneys for you. And you can call us at 314-961-8200. Now, please only call us if you're wanting to hire us. We're getting a ton of calls right now because of this policy change and because of the Trump administration's treatment of immigrants. So we really ask that the purpose of calling the office is to consider hiring us to work on your naturalization or your green card case. You can also email us info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. If you are looking for something else, if you're just looking for free resources, including the ability to talk to me, we have a ton of them. And let me tell you about them. Number one, we have our Immigrant Home Facebook group. So that's a group that has thousands of immigrants going through the immigration process, talking about issues just like this. We have our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. You can turn on the alerts. That way, whenever we go live, you'll be one of the first to find out. You'll be alerted and get access to that video. You can also follow us on TikTok at Immigration Hacking. And then finally, we have our Immigration Answers live show. That's a show that I do 3, 4, or 5 times a week. It's just me answering questions with immigrants for an hour, hour and a half on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We'd love to have you join us, and we'll see you next time.